Hey everybody, we are in day 128 in our Bible reading plan, Judges 7 through 9 and Psalm 127. Today we see the highs and the lows of Gideon's life. We start off with a bang with chapter 7. Gideon is a man prone to insecurity. He starts off thinking he could barely get the job done. And the Lord convinces him that he's with him and has an intent and a purpose to use Gideon. And there are moments of brilliance in Gideon's life, and then there's really his sad end of his life, and we'll make our way there. But chapter 7 is when he has already had a relationship with God. He's seen God come through on a couple of places where he pushed God to prove himself in a sense, and God has shown himself faithful to him. And in chapter 7, God says, listen, you're not going to win by your own strength. You're going to reveal through your life and through this plan of war that God is the one who's helping the people of Israel. So he takes him from an army of like 30,000 people to 300, and makes no logical sense. In fact, there's a section where Gideon is afraid, so he and his armor bearer, they go down to the enemy's camp, and even the enemy is used by God to encourage Gideon and help him overcome his fear. And sure enough, they go to war, they sing a song of praise, they break the lamps, the lights shine, and the victory's won. And it's amazing. This story has been taught by preachers for centuries and inspires such awe. And even in my heart today, it was just so encouraging to remember that God doesn't need us to be strong enough. He's the one who comes in and wins the battles in our life. But then you hit chapter 8, and again, you see him in one little sentence that has always encouraged me in verse 4, exhausted yet pursuing. That describes many of us today who are walking in God's ways. Don't give up if you're exhausted. Keep on keeping on. He goes on and again continues to win battles. And then there's a scene at the end of chapter 8 where it almost feels like they're trying to make Gideon king. But remember, he's not king. This is the era of the judges, but it feels that way. And for a split second, you kind of feel him saying, when they ask him to be ruler over them, he says, no, the Lord will rule over you. And you're like, wow, Gideon, you're so godly. And in the very next verse, basically, he builds this golden ephod, and it becomes a snare to them, and they worship it. And that lasted for 40 years. And Gideon was unfaithful in his marriages, had 70 sons. And so after he dies, there's this battle between Abimelech, one of his concubine's sons, and then the rest he kills all of the other brothers. And Abimelech rules a while. I think if I was struck by anything in the reading in chapter 9 is that after he kills all of his brothers, God kind of lets him get away with it for a while. And it's so easy sometimes to look at evil and think, how are they getting away with it? But they're not. Justice is coming. And you read the story of Abimelech, and it ends up at the end with him being killed by a woman who threw a stone on his skull. And that was, of course, prophesied by earlier in the chapter. But still, I think the big idea today is this. God doesn't choose us to accomplish his purposes in us or through us because we are strong, but he lovingly uses us despite our very weaknesses to show that he is strong. And we see that here today. The other thing we see, of course, is that we need a savior. And the human judges, as great as they are, as awesome as their victories are not going to carry for us the victories that Jesus Christ alone can accomplish for us. And so as we read the Judges, it's going to be much more evident that we need a savior. And by God's grace, we know he came and he rose from the dead. But for today, settle our hearts on knowing that God can use us even when we don't feel strong enough to be used by him. Love you guys. Have a great day.